welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman. I wanted to take a couple seconds before we actually start the show to thank Emily Simon from Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, Christine Nolan from Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and Dave Cowan from Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. All three of them are participating in a conversation today, which is actually show number 29 for Inside Great Lakes Sailing, which started about 6 months ago. We get a chance to talk about junior sailing this week and basically talk a lot about what happened over the summer. I hope you will get out of it the passion that these coaches bring to the table for programs that really try to infuse children and teenagers to learn to love sailing as much as we all do. It's pretty remarkable when you listen to their suggestions and their thoughts, having just conducted a season in the face of a pandemic. I had a chance to work with these guys this summer, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate their efforts, their time, and more importantly, their commitment to a program that is far beyond what I think the average person knows. We cover a bunch of subjects, but I just want to let you know, and I want to tell them how much it's appreciated of being a part of their family, and I really look forward to working them with in the future. I hope you'll enjoy the show and take some insights from what coaches who coach junior sailing in the face of a pandemic really think about what we do outside the realm of all the opinions of those who are not involved. So enjoy, have a great Labor Day weekend, and please stay safe. Hi, welcome back to another edition of Inside Great Lakes Sailing. My name is Greg Norman. We're fortunate to have Emily Simon, who is the Junior Sailing Director at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, along with Christina Nolan, who is also part of Grosse Pointe Yacht Club. Christina, your official title, I know you're a high school coach, but what's your connection to junior sailing?
I'm the head coach at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and then also the coach at Grosse Pointe South. Okay. And I've been coaching in the area for the past 15-ish years, just locally and, throughout the programs. I was the director at North Star for a while, and I've coached for a few other high schools and clubs as well.
We wanted to take a chance. I was a junior sailing program director at Crescent, and Mike Cowan hopefully will join us at some point. If not, we'll interview Mike a little bit later and have a separate conversation. But we just want to have a synopsis of what happened this summer based on the pandemic, based on all the things that we did. We still put in races. And I guess the easiest place to start, and I'll leave it up to you guys, any thoughts in the postseason, having gone through what we just went through in the preseason and then during the season?
I suppose the first thought is just that we all did it, which was, we had so many Zoom conversations with the same set of characters. Sorry, now my bird wants to join in the conversation.
It's fine.
And, how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this safely? Is it worth it? And, all of us clubs went in with, I think, a little bit different attitude to how we felt towards getting all these kids together this summer. And ultimately, we all accomplished our goals. We got through it relatively safely. And it was just so great to see the kids come in on the first day, like not having been with their peers and not knowing if they would be able to be there. And I feel like everyone entered into the summer just with the happiness of being able to sail. And I think that was one of the greatest things about the entire season. So.
Okay. Any thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, something that brought joy to me every day was just going and seeing the camaraderie amongst the kids. They're out there, they're on the dock, they're rigging their boats, we're outside, going on the water. It's just so valuable. And especially, I think, after being restricted, especially with extracurriculars and sports, they were so happy to be with their friends, with their coaches, with the other fleets. And you take it for granted. When it was happening every summer, you take it for granted. But the joy I got personally coaching, the little moments, the joy I found in the little moments, I will never forget. Like just watching them have lunch together meant so much to me. And just seeing them out there being kids, it was nice. It was a much more relaxed race schedule, which has its pros and cons, but they still got out there and raced and sailed, and there were more opportunities for fun because we weren't towing and trailering and busy and this schedule and running here from there, here to there. It was really about sailing and having fun and improving and being serious, but also sailing, getting on the water and being with your friends.
I think the word flexible is written across my forehead. And I think of being flexible because literally every day we came in and it was something different. When we first got at Crescent, all of a sudden we're doing 420s with one sail and one kid because that's the way the flag wanted to take it. And it wasn't met with great enthusiasm, but we got through it. And then at the end of the first week, heading into the first week of competition, we decided that maybe it was okay that they could sail together. But I don't think I've ever been more flexible as a coach or as a manager in my entire life, because you kind of go in with a concept of where you're headed. And I'm not sure even the first day you had any idea where you were going with it. I mean, you knew your program, but you just didn't know what bumps were going to be put in the road. And I think that's something that, you have to kind of deal with and move forward. So it's one of those things.
Yeah, there was like a certain fragility to it all this summer where, you just poured your entire heart into it every single week because you didn't know what was going to happen. You didn't know between the law and, someone getting sick. You just didn't know what you were able to have. So you took it day by day, like what you said, the flexibility, and everyone just kind of poured their hearts into it this summer. And it was, I think the kids too, everyone was just so happy to be there. And it was really nice to see.
Do you think and I'm going to use the term overreact in a good term here, because obviously we're talking about a pandemic that kills people. So here's my question. Right. Did we overreact to kids who may have been sick when they first came aboard? You're taking temperatures, doing the rest of it, but did you find yourself honestly more cautious than you normally would have been, even knowing what you knew about the pandemic?
Oh, 100%. 100%. We had two situations where we honestly had someone in the first 30 minutes of our first day get phically ill just out of nerves. And
yeah,
it was
totally nerves. It was all nerves.
Yes, ate a big breakfast, jumped in the cold water, and it happened. And like the first day of sailing in a global pandemic, that happens. And we totally, we sent everyone home and waited on test results, because that's, you look at the risk and reward of every situation, right? And all of our jobs, first and foremost, is to keep kids safe. And we know how to keep kids safe on the water, but we don't know how to keep kids safe from this pandemic, it was definitely a learning curve on when we jump on things and when we're like, okay, like we can use our own judgment. And, between the liability and just wanting to keep kids safe, there was definitely a little bit of overreaction. But ultimately you look at the summer and we all got through it. So
yeah. And not only that, like I have fond memories of this summer. Like even Emily talks about that situation. So, I mean, we're sitting in her office and we're an hour into our program and we didn't know if we should laugh or cry because the kids threw up. And we're like, wait, really? Day one? Like day one? But we set it up well. We set it up so that each of the groups were kind of, especially to start out, they were really meeting as individual small groups. And that way, so in that circumstance, which everyone was fine and nobody had COVID and it was all good. But in that circumstance, we didn't have to send home 150 kids. We only had to send home 10. So it wasn't totally tragic.
3 days into the season, one of our new coaches, I thought overreacted to a situation. It was a kid who had gotten sick from a bad lunch. And she just really overreacted until the end of the day. She told me she had lupus. Well, all of a sudden you got an autoimmune disease. As a coach, you should overreact because, slightest problem. And I noticed with us, we went overboard at that point to make sure she was safe and put her in situations that there wasn't going to be a problem. And I think for us, it turned out, and you guys are both mothers, so you can hopefully appreciate this. Our little boys were a lot more frail than our little girls across the board. It was almost 4-1 that the boys had an issue, and the girls seemed to just kind of plow through it. And I'm not sure
girls got fired.
Maybe just all of a sudden you find out that your coach is, could be compromised. Yeah. And it's like, well, why didn't you tell us this? Well, and then the young lady's 18 and she just doesn't have the experience, and you're trying to make points with understanding of how it works so that you don't send somebody home without, we're not medical doctors and we're making diagnosis to send kids home. So now you got a liability issue you got to worry about, which is typically not something we had to worry about in any other.
Exactly. Yeah, that was the challenge too. You're balancing liability with common, or, your own common sense, or as moms, it's like, okay, this person doesn't look like they're feeling good, so you use your own common sense, but then there's also the liability aspect. And it's challenging because while, the overwhelming majority are saying, oh, kids are typically okay, everyone's coming to this program with different stories. We had coaches that have elderly parents, or, and there's we had kids that were immunocompromised in our program that felt like it was worth taking the risk to come and enjoy the water. So it is a challenge. And while I think everyone had some overreaction, because ultimately you can say that because everything turned out fine, but that's why we can sit here and say that, you never know.
Well, I know this as well, Christine. You had this situation where there were rumors that there were kids in Grosse Pointe who had gone to parties and gotten sick. And some of those kids had brothers and sisters, in a couple of cases, coaches. One at Bayview that was at least exposed. And all of a sudden, that's another sliver that goes into the arrow of trying to figure out this is up above the kids, because now we had kids out partying, college age kids. Some of those kids that come back from the party up in East Lansing, where they had all of the tests. And so you always had your mind working in a place that was just almost like a lookout, in the woods, worrying about the bear coming out of the woods to take your food. Mm-hmm. It got a little crazy from that perspective, but you work through it, so it is what it is. Christine, did you guys have any problems with parents? Do you think parents understood most of it?
I thought the parents were great. The parents were so happy and grateful for their kids to be out enjoying the outdoors and doing an activity with their friends. Overall, we had a good parent response. I mean, obviously, of course, just like anything else in life, there's a range. Some people are more concerned than others, and you just kind of, as a coach, and you kind of adapt to that and make the modifications that are required to make them feel safe to drop their kids off in our supervision for 8 hours. But really, we had very good feedback from parents. In the variety of ranges, from the concerned to the not concerned. So
I feel like either way too, like our parents, at least, even from the most concerned to the least concerned, had a great respect for, like there was no one, even people who voiced like how they felt, like it was always very respectful, because again, everyone's coming to this from different situations, different backgrounds, different health. So I think ultimately, again, it all goes back to we were all just so happy to be there. Parents, kids, us.
We only had one parent, and I ended up showing where the gate was, and it worked out very well. She got her money back, and it was nice from that standpoint. There's a little bit. We lost DYRA early for a variety of reasons. And the question I want to ask is that, I'm not suggesting that we were a rudderless ship, because I don't think we were. I think there's a bunch of people that all had different ideas. But it took a little bit of time to get it moving in a direction, because I think everybody was worried about their own programs and trying to put things together from that standpoint. One of the things that we keep talking about is maybe if we come back with DYRA next year, is maybe having a chairman within the junior sailing committee. And I point to that Barb Seski is the boss, and she runs it. But sometimes she acts more as a facilitator than a director. And I say that's just my opinion. But moving forward, do you see leadership as something that would be helpful? Because I've had that conversation with Tom Vickers, who's the DYRA Commodore, just to have it kind of move, and so that somebody, I think it needs more than that. I just wondered what your thoughts were.
I think that's a great point too. I think that there's so much value in the DRA because of the history, and that we are a very unique situation, like locally having all of these clubs close enough that we can meet up and race every week. That's not a situation you find all over the country, multiple clubs racing. But I do think that progression and like forward movement and modernizing things is important at this point. And I think that we as amongst the clubs have shown that we can do that. You know, I mean, we adapted and figured out how to make this work this year. So yes, I mean, is the DRY valuable? For sure. Do we need to modernize it? 100%.
Emily, any thoughts?
Yeah, I honestly enjoyed the format that we did this year so much more than in the previous years I've been in this position. And I think that part of it really showed that while DRYA has, you know, promoted racing in this area for years and years and years, and, you know, they have a place, I feel like there's been a gigantic disconnect between DRYA and the kids and the coaches. It's just not there. And, you know, we have situations where while the formality is important for children to learn, we're spending 2 hours after events waiting on protests. And these are just kids that are just going out to sail. And I loved this summer, the informality of it. And it wasn't about seasons. I mean, we did seasons still, which is amazing, but like it was about getting the kids on the water and then getting them on with their day afterwards. It wasn't this tired process every time we got together to race. And I thought that it was so great to see. Hi, Mike. It was so great to see all the clubs come together. And I think having the coaches kind of drive how things went on the water added, it put the sailing at the forefront. And again, the formality has its place. The formality is important to learn and to be familiar with, but ultimately we don't need that every week just to get the kids out competing. It gets everyone tired. You know, we don't need to be doing that every week. So
Welcome,
one of
Mike.
the big things that
Just real quick, Christy, just one quick second here. I just wanted just Mike Cowan coming back into the fold.
Yeah, sorry, I lost track of time.
Not a problem. We'll cut. Mike, Christine, we'll come back to you, but I just want to ask Mike the same question. Mike, we were talking about DYRA and not having sort of, and then again, I used the term rudderless ship. I don't think we were rudderless, but we're talking and have been having this discussion with Tom Vickers. I have at our club at Crescent about maybe next year if DYRA is involved, and hopefully that's back to kind of normal. Maybe having a chairman of the junior sailing committee to sort of give it a little more direction. And we just wondered what your thoughts on that might be.
I think anybody getting involved in the DRYA would be a good thing. And I think having more representation on the DRYA board would be a good thing. You know, we're all partners here, right? You know, and I think you found, Greg, that I don't want there to be any opposition anywhere. I just want people to create good sailing opportunities for all the kids. And so I think having any representation on DRYA board would be great.
Christine, I kind of interrupted you. You were going to say something.
Oh no, I was just to follow up. One of the really valuable takeaways for me this summer was the 3 minutes of arbitration on the water, which is also a high school rule, and that is like we were talking about waiting for 2 hours for protests. Well, you know, really these are short races. They're kids. Like we can work it out. Get two unbiased coaches, figure it out on the water, get on land. Like, you know, God willing, we're all back to going to regattas and having award ceremonies next year. We don't have to sit around for 2 hours before we tow home or put boats on trailers, and parents don't have to be notified of a late pickup and all of that. So I think that the on the water arbitrations where it's at with the protests.
We talked about an informal season. We pretty much did that. I know that I did not get up the scores on video. I usually got them up the same day, and the last day I didn't get them scores back exactly. And I actually got 12 emails from parents going, "Where are the scores?"
Oh yeah.
And well, the upside to that is that that's a good thing because they're obviously looking for it. If it's only 12, it's 12 more than we're looking for it before. Did we learn something from the informality this year? And I say that because, again, it was a lot less tense than maybe it has been in prior years.
I think so, honestly. And I know me and Christina differ a little bit on this, and that's why we work so well together.
Depending on the day.
I know, right? So I liked that. I know that some of the parents and the kids really do enjoy the awards and seeing how they stand in the area. But I think like the fact that that was softened, not taken away completely, but the fact that that was softened this year, I enjoyed that. I think the parents enjoyed that. I think the kids enjoyed it. I saw some kids that normally get really stressed out to go and do these regattas just say, hey, it's just like sailing for the day. It's not a big deal. And they went out and did it and they had fun. But I mean, again, you see the spectrum. Kids are different and parents follow suit, right? You have the kids that want to be competitive and you have the kids that are there for a good time. But I liked the informality of it. I think it was nice. You know, it was, I think the biggest challenge was the weather. And I think all of us will agree with that. It seemed like every single time we had a regatta, there was no wind and we only got like 4 races in. But other than that, I think it worked out well.
I thought it was great. I mean, I thought the informality of it was really refreshing, to be honest with you.
Agreed.
After all, we're just out sailing boats, trying to learn how to sail boats. And I didn't, there are times where I think we take ourselves a little too seriously. And so I thought this was a great opportunity not to. And so I thought that was terrific. And, you know, we'll get back to normal eventually, where we'll have sort of formal protest meetings and that sort of thing. And that's okay, I guess. But
No, no.
yeah, I mean, I hope we learn. I hope we will take. I hope we'll take away some lessons from this summer and project it forward. To be honest with you, just in our little lake here, you know.
One of the things we did this year was centralize the racing where we kind of all had to come to a normal geographic area. Now that hurts obviously Pontiac and North Star. And we obviously want to go back to being able to have those places where we travel to, but does it make sense to maybe think about maybe having a couple more centrally located areas so that it makes it easier than having to travel all over the place? And I say that from the previous year that I was involved, that you had, you know, travel days that accounted for, I think, 4 or 5 days when you could have been sailing. Or do we go back to the old ways of keeping the central, or going back to that you're in front of your yacht club, we're in front of ours, and we go back to traveling? What do you think of that idea?
I think personally there's a balance. You know, you do a little bit of both. The kids like to go to the clubs. They like to. It's exciting. They enjoy it. They enjoy being visitors. It's good lessons for them to learn as like growing up, how to be a visitor at a club, how to be, you know. There's a lot that goes into it. But now saying maybe we have like one formal day, you know, we could say, all right, we don't do a 3-day regatta. We do a 1 day, we have a 2-day scheduled regatta and we have a storm day or a weather day, you know, because weather was an issue and we're a little more flexible, especially amongst the 3 of us. I mean, we could easily coordinate more, even for practice racing.
Yeah, I'm open to pretty much anything. You know, I know clubs like to have the racing at their clubs, and just because they want that ownership. But I mean, Greg, what are you thinking? I mean, as far as like different central areas, I mean, between Crescent and Grosse Pointe, or in between, the Little Club and Bayview, if you will.
Well, I personally had a metamorphosis, and let me use the example that I come from. I've coached sports where you're required. I coach football and I've coached lacrosse. I also coach skiing. Well, let me throw the skiing model out. The skiing model is there's one ski hill, there's 10 high schools on one hill. Mm-hmm. You better very quickly understand the process of working together with the other coaches because you have one hill. I came into the sailing season. We were going to kick the snot out of everybody because it was the competitive thing and we didn't like anybody. And what I found out really early with having open mind, and especially, I mean, I hope I have an open mind, especially when you don't have the knowledge base, that all of a sudden I found out you guys, that what I thought I knew wasn't accurate. I found out you were very cooperative. I thought you were terrific, helping even a rookie out from that standpoint. So I completely changed my process. The only thing I had identified the year before was I thought we spent way too much time racing and not enough time practicing. which is something I'm as a college coach. I have some expertise in understanding that part of it. And I wanted to make sure we had, riding in Easterly, our big tug isn't a day of sailing. It's riding in a boat, and going swimming doesn't constitute that. And if you're coming to sailing practice, you should be sailing.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did this year, going back to the geographic thing, I think we can do some things. We just opened up Saturdays and Sundays. Just come to the boat, just come to the club and go sailing. There's no structure. Now we had instructors there. Of course I was an idiot and all the rest of it. Well, the first week we had 2. By the end of the summer, we were 25, 26, 27 kids in boats, including kids from other places.
On the weekends.
Yeah, on the weekends.
Wow.
4 hours and the mom would say, well, what's the structure? There isn't one. And we cut the trees so that down at the sailing center, they could sit and talk to each other and do crochet or whatever it is that mothers and parents and dads were doing. And we had kids wanting to race. We had kids wanting to sit in a boat. We had some kids that took their boat, hung it up to the dock, and spent 2 hours swimming. But there wasn't a structure. It was just out there. So let me pull in the second part of this, is that we have a limited window of people that we can draw from. The numbers are closing down because the reality is there's not that many kids, and Grosse Pointe's closing schools. So I think if we're going to make this sport work, we have to be cooperative with each other, certainly. I think there needs to be a better tunnel so a kid, if he is really good, can become an Olympic champion. Mm-hmm. And it turns out that Olympic champions, in terms of the United States, most of the kids are multi-sport athletes. Most of the kids that sail, at least for us, are single sport athletes. They don't have another sport. So my question to you guys is, how do we share the same amount of kids when we're trying to build programs? And that's kind of the second part of the discussion.
It's funny you bring that up, because honestly, that was one of my high school interview questions with the athletic director, and I won't forget. He said, what is your opinion on kids participating in more than one sport? And my gut reaction was, I support it. I would never not support, especially at a high school age. They're being physically active in something they're passionate about. Why would you not support that? And so these kids are still figuring themselves out, preventing them from doing other sports and saying, oh, focus on this, that's not going to make them a great sailor. Them choosing to sail, choosing to do this sport is what's going to make them a great sailor. So let them dabble, let them try other things. You want kids to be passionate. So those are the kids that you want at practice, the passionate ones.
So 2 things that we've done at our club, because at the Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, they have a swim team and they have tennis. So that's actually something that we struggle with every summer, is how do we complement this programming and not compete with it. And there's a couple things we've done that I think kind of has helped, especially nowadays where some kids don't want to sign up for an entire summer of one sport. They've got soccer camp, they've got hockey camp, they've got all kinds of things that they're doing. And I've seen all of you guys, we've been offering, instead of a full summer of sailing, you do 2-week sessions. And that's been really popular. I know Bayview, you guys do that too. And that's kind of let people do that. We also do half-day sessions, which, while it complicates things at times, I think it offers more options for the kids that want to do other things and have other sports.
I'm a big fan of half days. I mean, I grew up sailing in Connecticut,
Mm-hmm.
and the little kids met in the morning, the older kids met in the afternoon, and that was how I could play tennis for so long. So
Right.
With the
Other
numbers,
thing sorry.
No,
The
go ahead.
other thing we did too is we started programming at age 5 for the last 2 years. We started a kinder sailing program, and that's been really fun as well, because I think part of the decline that you see in sailing numbers across the country are because you see kids starting sailing at 7 and 8, but they're starting soccer and baseball and t-ball and all these other sports at 3 and 4. And so I think it helps. We've definitely gotten some kids we've retained kids from those programs as well. So between the options and starting younger, I think it's been more easy to do that with.
Do you think within our models we push hard for them to race?
We've
Here's my point.
Yeah.
We push hard to race, or are we pushing hard to teach them to sail? There's a huge difference between those two curriculums.
There is. And I don't know if you guys do any of the U.S. sailing symposiums, but my biggest takeaway, the last one, hi, Courtney. The biggest takeaway.
Sorry, Courtney Collins.
I know. Presenting. There she is. The biggest takeaway I got at the last one was that adventure sailing is the largest growing sailing program in this country right now. And we've had kids jump back from racing to go into that program. And I think where you were talking earlier about the different boats, like they go on the J22s, they go windsurfing, they just have fun. Kids love it.
Explain what that adventure program is.
Yeah. Oh.
It's non-competitive sailing, and so they explore different aspects of it, and some of it is competitive. They do match racing one day, and then the next day they go swimming and mess around on the windsurfers, and it's just about getting on the water, seeing different aspects to sailing. There's no pressure, there's no stress. It's unstructured time with other kids. And people love it. It's not for everyone, but kids love it.
I think the big thing with adventure is it's an option for a teenager who doesn't want to race. Mm-hmm. And like you find that you have these kids that start out and learn to sail, like the next reasonable step is Green Fleet or Wrapup, like you start racing. But then some of them just don't enjoy that. So it's different personalities of kids. And so if they have the choice, okay, I don't need to quit sailing. I have the option that I can either go on this racing track, or I can go on, I want to be a cruising boat in the future, or I want to just go have fun and go swimming.
And that's good. I mean, one of the things about Bayview Yacht Club is we are basically about racing sailboats. And sometimes we get a mismatch of kids who would probably be more appropriate at Grosse Pointe Yacht Club in the adventure sailing program, because we're like, okay, learn to sail and then learn to race, you know.
As an avid person who does not enjoy cruising at all, I can completely identify with that. It's like race or no go.
It's just sort of who Bayview is. You know, they're sort of different characters of the clubs, you know, especially when Little Club is part of everything. You know, Bayview's a little different than Crescent. And Crescent's a little different than Grosse Pointe Yacht Club, and it's just who the clientele is, and that's okay. It's just who each club has a little bit of a different character.
I asked the question. I passed on Monday double-handed this year because I was coaching and the rest of it. So we decided to pick up for the second Monday session starting in August. And the first one rained out. The second one, I sat on my boat for 2 hours, and I finally called my partner, and I said, I'm not going to race. And he was, well, what's the problem? And I said, I just finally came to the conclusion I don't like it. Yeah. I ski raced my entire life. I still am involved in that sport. I'm on the sidelines from September to June as a coach. I get all the competitive stuff I want to do. I've been cruising for 40 years, and I love my boat. My boat looks down below, looks like a Ritz hotel because it's got a, you know, it's. My point is, when I made this decision, I called my wife and I said, oh my God, I'm not racing anymore. I finally made the decision, and I've been miserable for 5 years, and everybody at Crescent races for the most part, with the exception of a few cruisers. And most of the people that cruise are, you know, I'm 66, but they're 20 years older than me. The point I'm making is that with kids, I know that the cloud lifted. It's like, oh my God, I have enjoyed sailing now for the last 3 weeks more than I ever had, because I don't have to worry about, I go in the direction the wind takes me rather than worry about going around some mark.
All right.
And I think sometimes the term, and if you've watched this show, you've noticed that we've had some conversations with some pretty good sailors. We've had some America's Cup guys on and those kinds of things.
Sure.
All of them said that the FUN word isn't used enough. And I think that's kind of what we're getting at. And I think one of the things this summer provided for us was to have that less structured opportunity. And I think I saw a lot more smiles this summer than I did last.
I hope so. You know, I mean, we were still racing, and it actually occurred to me, well, why shouldn't we be more formal? I mean, you know, it doesn't get us any more contagious or whatever. But I still thought the approach for the summer was terrific. I hope part of it's gonna continue on. it may not be for everybody. I mean, everybody's got their own, their own interests. I mean, I know for me when I was, in my teenage years, racing was everything. And I remember talking to a guy in this big boat, my first big boat I sailed on, and said, I never go cruising. We never go, we were always out to go beat somebody else. And we actually made it a point to take out his Express 37 for fun. And we did, it was great. And we're like, okay, well, when's the next race?
Could we do a better job with our high school kids, maybe having more big boat experience, more keel boat experience as part of our programs?
I mean, that is great. You've got to get people to offer their big boats to sail on.
I get that, but would they benefit from that, do you think?
Of course, of course. I mean, time in the boat, time in any boat benefits you.
I think also the more avenues of sailing you show them, the more likely they're going to retain the sport. And so when you were talking earlier, and I was thinking back to my time, I coached at Bayview a long time ago, and it is like that. All the parents are racers, and if you can't just look at a parent and say your kid just doesn't like that, But you learn really quickly coaching. I know Christina knows this. We all know this, that only a few of those kids continue on racing sailboats seriously. Only a small handful are going to go and race sailboats in college and get super into it. And the rest you just hope are safe boaters, good sailors, and enjoy the water for their lifetime. This is a lifetime sport.
It's a lifetime. The best thing about our sport is that it's something you can do for the rest of your life.
Right.
There's so much value in that. And that's always my biggest pitch. And that looks different for every kid. That looks different at whatever level they jump into it. And it's never too late. You can always get into it. I mean, there's adults that get into sailing every day. So it's just.
Go ahead.
One of the things I love to say is that sailing's always there. Like when I had my kids, I didn't really race. I still go cruising with my kids more than I race right now. And it's always there. You can always hop on a boat whenever you want. And that's the beauty of the sport. And so I think instilling that and showing kids how many different avenues they can take with it is only going to create more boaters and more sailors going forward.
With this great passion, and you can listen to the conversations and know that that's important to all of us, but what can we do better for our kids next year? What would something that goes through your mind to improve?
I would say that we should be making our goal to start on time racing.
Okay, that's a practical.
That would be something I would.
Goal.
I feel like I put all this pressure on them to be on time and start, and we're gonna be here by this point and this point, and then the races don't start on time, and then we're all coordinating volunteer. I get it. It was a relaxed season. It's all fine. No, not throwing stones at anyone. I'm just saying. That would be something I would say, maybe elevate the serious of the race days, elevate the seriousness of it. Make it, we start at this time, we start at this time. If we're 5 minutes late, we put the AP up. But that formality was gone, but those are good lessons to learn as a learning sailor.
Yeah.
I think there's two different directions I would like to see DROA, and I know that our program plans on taking. And sorry, my bird's flying around. One of those directions, as far as the racing goes, we focus so much on the DRYA stuff. And I think that DRYA is great, but I have kids that don't want to travel because they want to be there for the DRYA regattas so they place in the seasons. And that is counterproductive. So I think that sometimes what we want to be, right? You mentioned earlier, how do you create kids that go on to do Olympic campaigns? Part of that is by being a stepping stone, not necessarily the end all be all. And I feel like we put pressure on these kids, so much pressure as a club, and then we're guilty of it too, to you have to do well in DRYA. And I would like to see us all move forward from that and create more opportunities for kids to travel outside of DRYA and encourage them that these regattas are great, but they're practice. Go do other things. Go sail other places.
Go get beat somewhere else. I mean,
Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Go sail with 100 kids on the line.
Don't be the big fish in the small pond all the time. And
Yeah.
I think the other direction that I know that we're taking as a club is we're looking for new boats, and they're not racing boats, they're J22s, so our kids can go out and have fun. I went and pulled these numbers. We had 178 kids, and only 41 of them were in the racing program. The rest were learn to sail, kinder sailing, adventure sailing.
Mm-hmm.
Kids want to have fun on boats.
yeah.
And that is our foundation. That's why we're all here on this Zoom meeting at 9:00 at night on a Thursday. Because
Right.
we
Well, this isn't a Zoom meeting. This is actually a show.
a show. I'm so sorry.
This isn't a Zoom meeting. This is actually
This wonderful show. We're on Zoom. I'm sorry, Greg.
I just want to
We're
confuse
celebs
it.
now.
I don't want to confuse it. I got to take minutes. And
Oh, no.
back to you.
Okay.
That's all.
Yes, but that's why we're all here, right?
Right.
We all threw our kids to bed and hopped on the computer. Hi, Dougie.
Hi, Dougie.
Mike,
Because
give me-
we want to see kids on the water. And so I think those are the directions I want to see us take in the future to create that.
Mike, you have any thoughts on what we can do better?
Gosh, I'm just looking for enthusiasm from everybody else. I think we do a pretty good job, and just have to let the kids have their, perform to their gifts.
Mm-hmm.
And if it doesn't work for them, then that's okay. And Bayview's okay at that. Again, we're pretty focused on racing, and that's okay too.
I brought the subject up because I've listened to on a number of Facebook blogs in various places. Everybody's got an opinion about what kind of boats we should be sailing and what kind of this we should be doing.
Right.
All of which comes from people who don't spend any time in the middle of the summer, in a boat trying to figure out what direction they're going. Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so
Well, the one thing I would say is that we need that middle boat. We need that boat between the Optimist and the 420/Laser.
right. But what?
And I think that would be better.
I guess what I'm saying is that I want people to listen to hear coaches talk about junior sailing and what the ups and downs are. And again, I want to, if I was watching this, the thing I would come away with is the camaraderie of what interest they all have. It's not trying to, I may be a Spartan and you may be a Wolverine, but we still have the best interest of wanting to make sure we have a great football game. I mean, as an analogy. And I didn't really honestly believe that there was certainly the competence, but the passion that I have for sailing that you guys have for sailing and coaching. And it's remarkable to be able to sort of slip in with this group, because I realize I have in skiing what you guys have in sailing, and I eventually want to have the same thing, which is why I want to go to a bunch of classes. And I just want people to understand who aren't involved in junior sailing, who have opinions, that this is a lot of work. And the work goes into it, and it just doesn't get left at the dock at the end of the season. And I think that's kind of was my point of doing the show, so that they could have a discussion about things and see what the coaches talk about, not the parents and the kids, but what we talk about. I think that's important. I really do.
Think about this stuff, yeah. But as far as being better as an association, I think that we need that boat that bridges. That serves the kid who's too big for the Optimist, but just a little too small for the 420/Laser. You find that in every other association in the country, mostly on the coast, down in Florida, and for some reason the Great Lakes and Lake St. Clair just seem to be a little bit behind in that. And I'm pushing, and I don't expect it to happen next year. I had a demo boat at a couple demo boats at Bayview, and I hope we get them back. And I'm gonna start pushing.
Let me, without delving into one boat being better than the other, let me ask this specific question. If you can't turn on a television and watch an international race that isn't foiling, so the discussion I've had with a bunch of people, foiling versus a monohull type process.
Yeah.
All of this is based on money. I don't know about your club. Our club doesn't have an extra 40 grand to go out and buy a whole bunch of boats.
Nope.
I'm trying to fix the ones we have and make sure that they're efficient in the rest of it. So here's my question. I've talked to John Pierce, the U.S. Sailing Youth Director.
Yeah.
You know, it's flip a coin. Would you go in the direction of a foil? Would you go in the direction of – I don't think anybody's going to go in any direction because I think money holds us all back. Is that fair?
That is fair, and I wouldn't go and try to get a foiling trainer just because I just think there's a whole lot of steps you got to do before you go to a foiling boat. I would think that makes sense to me anyway. But I think going to a double-handed asymmetrical boat that's not foiling is a really good trainer. You know, when I decades ago when I sailed in Long Island Sound, we sailed. I went from Optimus to Blue Jays, which are basically mini Optimus or mini Lightnings, excuse me, and then I went to 420s, and it's just a great. You just have that middle ground, I think.
Well, here's the simplest question for the three of you. I can say no for Crescent very easily, but here's the question: do we have money? A fair amount of it to go out and provide for a third boat and a third fleet, or is it kind of just beating a dead horse and kind of a moot point?
So I have a couple things to say on that, and I know, I know we don't agree on this one, but so I think that we've tried to throw in intermediate boats in the past. We've had the FJ, which got phased out to 420s. We tried to throw the open Bic in there. And I mean, we all still have open Bics and we still don't use them. And I think yes, money is one of the main drivers of not being able to go out and buy a fleet. And it's on a couple of different fronts. It's money to purchase the assets. It's money to put a coach on top of it's the cost that keeps on costing, I suppose. Like it's, you got to have a coach. You've got to, recycling gear when you have a bunch of 420s is much easier than recycling gear when you have a bunch of different types of boats. But ultimately, like we still have our open Bics. We have a 29er out in our sailing center. We have J22s and we use all of those boats every single week. And so there's a difference between creating these opportunities for kids to hop on a foiling boat and hop on an asymmetrical boat and hop on an intermediate, fun, easy boat, and then trying to create a class that's competitive. That takes a whole nother level of money and effort and time. The other thing that we were talking about before is that the reason why we keep going back to the 420 is that they are so practical. It's such a basic boat with a symmetrical spinnaker and a spinnaker pole and a 2-sail double-handed boat or 3 sails. But if you learn the 420, you can learn.
Who's sailing symmetrical spinnakers these days in big boats?
Most people,
there
are a lot. And I will say it's much, much easier to sail a symmetrical spinnaker and hop on a boat and say, oh, there's no pole, than it is to learn a ASIM and then hop on a boat and say, what's a topping lift? Like, it's just.
Yeah.
Go back to my original question, which is if money is the driver, Grosse Pointe may have more money than Crescent. I'm sure that's the case. My point to it is you might be able to go out and buy 4 boats, whatever those might be. I know a Bic isn't an open lighter, but I get the point is that if we're trying to figure out if you're going to have 4 of something or 3 of something, then I've got to come up with 3 of something. So my point to it is, are we in a position financially to even have a conversation about what's next? I'm not suggesting that Club A or Club B can't have a foil for fun and having different kinds of boats. I'm just saying from a driving factor,
yes,
I don't see us even having a discussion about a third boat because money is just not there at the moment. Not that I can see.
It's not. And ultimately, like, if you're looking for intermediate boats, let's all buy 4.7 rigs. Like, why buy a whole new hull? You know, there's other options. You know, we have the jib and main class, which we didn't have, you know, when we sailed. And there's other ways to get past it, to offer opportunities for smaller beginner kids other than going out and spending a ton of money and then continuing to spend money maintaining it. It's just not practical, and I don't see it happening.
I will say that the RS boats are actually relatively affordable. But, I mean, listen, money's an issue. There's no doubt about that. But,
Christine,
you know, I mean, on the big boats that I've sailed on, I took most of the summer off for hip surgery. You know, we all have, you know, asymmetrical spinnakers. You know, even the Santa Cruz 70s, they're moving toward asymmetrical spinnakers. So it seems to me the future of those, I mean, we should at least give our kids experience in those. But again, and it's not that, I think the 420 is a great boat. But I think we put kids in it who are too little. That's at the end of the day, that it's got nothing to do with actually spinnaker pull, non-spinnaker pull. It's just if the kids aren't strong enough and big enough to handle it in a breeze, in a moderate breeze even, then we probably should look for another alternative. And I know that that's an uphill battle. I fully recognize that, and I know that I may not be successful, but I'm going to try anyway.
Christine, as a high school coach, there's a certain amount of kids on your team that are going to go to college, that potentially go to college. So part of your job, I think, as a high school coach, is to develop them to have the skills to be able to maybe even get a scholarship. So a boat plays a part in that. Now, obviously, the 420 is the only thing they sail at school, but would they benefit from the high school standpoint of having a different kind of boat, or are you happy with the sort of trail as a high school coach? And we're only talking now the high school kids. We're talking about this very small group of those junior sailors.
Yes, absolutely. So the majority of the colleges sell FJs and 420s across the country. There are some colleges that have offshore teams, but those are big boats, you know. So, and some of them do both. You know, some kids do both. Just depends on where you fit. You know, they go through, depending on the seriousness of the college, you go through a different track. I mean, so like Emily and I sailed club at Michigan State. Emily sailed college sailing at College of Charleston. Like, we both had very different experiences. I value the experience, but we both, based on our different experiences, we sailed the same boats. We both sailed FJs and 420s. I mean, so that's pretty universal across the country.
Okay.
I will say too, one of the things that I see as something that's lacking in the experiences we give our kids in this area is we do focus a lot. Like, high school sailing is amazing. I loved my time high school sailing, and I think it's so important. But like, it's the best college sailors. I went to a college that had kids come from all over the country, and the best sailors weren't the kids that went to the best high schools. I mean, they were a lot of times, but they weren't always those kids. They were the kids that sailed all kinds of different boats and were just the best all around general sailors. Because the best thing about college sailing and about high school sailing is you take it down to the basics. It's jib and main. You hike your butt off. And it's physical, and it's about the start, and it's about boat handling. And you don't get that from sailing. I mean, you get that from sailing high performance boats, but it's, again, with the high school and the college, you're drawing it back to the basics. And so as long as you develop sailors that have strong foundations, it doesn't matter what boats they're coming from. I mean, it's great that they're familiar with the 420s, but when I went and sailed FJs, you know, you can, while it's you're putting your feet differently and you're putting your body differently in the boat, it's the same basics. And so you don't need high performance boats to turn out great sailors. again, and it goes back to being that stepping stone, right? Like, it's foundations. We're creating good foundational sailors that can go on and do whatever they want, whatever.
It's sailing, right?
Right.
It's just like, you step on a 420 and it's basically the same as a 450.
Yeah.
Right.
In a main,
Gotta get it going.
there's some little differences, but it's basically the same thing.
Right.
I get that. Yeah.
I found out this year that my body weight would be equal that the entire crew for 420. So I'm not good. I'm not good for either group. It's all relative, from that perspective. I guess what I'd like to end on is any anecdotes from the summer, any thoughts, and maybe just kind of give us what you thought for this past summer.
I'll start. I personally, like I said earlier, I was just so grateful to have the opportunity to coach. As the high school coach, our spring season was called off. It was devastating for the seniors. I was very upset about it as well. It was so upsetting, and there were so many things that were going on leading up to the start of our season that I don't think any of us knew, are we going to do this? Like, is this going to happen? It's like, are we going to open on day one, or are we going to get shut down? You just don't know. And I was just appreciative. I think the kids were appreciative. We spread the love for sailing across the lake as a whole. I don't think any of our numbers were down, which is super impressive, really, if you think about all of it. And it just brings light. This was the year for sailing. I mean, it just we're outside, we're on boats, minimal. It's hard to be within 6 feet on a car boat. I don't know. Overall, I just thought it was awesome that we did it. I thought that the communalness of the club, like all of us working together at every regatta, was really impressive. And it shined a light on Lake St. Clair and all of the clubs.
I thought the regattas were great. We all worked together. It was tremendous. Like Christina said, certainly the baby regatta stands out in my mind because it was rainy, and then it was really sort of windy, and we got off a bunch of races. That was cool. But for me, what really stands out in my mind is taking all the kids' temperatures first thing in the morning. And, it was just.
Oh, that was a blast.
And then telling the kids to move apart, and put your buffs on. It was just crazy. And I'm happy no one got sick, to my knowledge, or to their knowledge, and I'm happy we pulled it off, just like Christina said. I mean, I know the parents were thrilled that, that we had a program. And Greg, you and I were talking before the season started. Are we really gonna be able to do this? And we did. It was cool. And to my knowledge, nobody in anybody's program got sick. And I think we did a good job. And a little tense, but I was just thrilled that it happened.
Mike?
Yeah, I think we really all had a similar takeaway. We just took it down to the love of sailing. We were all there. I mean, I know we all had our Zoom meetings before the season started about and they got heated. Like, can we do this? Is this even a conscionable decision to bring kids in and put them together and throw them on boats? And we all committed to it, and the kids committed to it, the parents, the coaches. It was a commitment on so many levels from so many people that helped keep us safe. It helped keep us on the water. And you look at what's flanking our program, and these kids had no school before. And now most of our kids aren't going to school face-to-face after, but we created 8 weeks of programming where kids got to be kids. Kids got to be together. They got to interact with their peers. I think we've proved that we can do some activities relatively safely. I know luck was also a huge factor, but ultimately, our equipment's in the UV light constantly. We're outdoors, and we could create something that was relatively safe. And hopefully with Christina's season going forward, hopefully we can continue to do that, because we have shown that we can do it. All of us have. And the fact that we put it together, I mean, we waited till the very last day to send the text to everyone, hey, we did it, because up until that last day, everything still could have gone to, it still could have been destroyed. It was so fragile, and everyone worked so hard. Whether it was all of us together at the regattas or just like our team at our own clubs, it was incredible. It just really was incredible.
This spring, coming back from a trip, we had just beat Ohio State. My athletic director called and says, by the way, the season's canceled. And I had spent almost a year rebuilding a program to get enough kids to go play. And, your heart sinks. And so when summer came, you kind of come into the first year, you just kind of, I'm a volunteer, Crescent. You just kind of do what you do and stick around and watch the background, but you try to have some input in what you saw. And I went back for 2 years through Facebook and through Instagram on both Grosse Pointe, Bayview, to just look at pictures and see how much was put up from a visual standpoint. And it's surprisingly very little was put up. And then we started to do our video thing with the scores. And then I started to see more pictures up, and I started to see more interaction. And if you go back for about 4 weeks, there were literally more pictures put up in 4 weeks than there had been the previous 2 years. So part of that is also publicity and being able to get those opportunities out and for people to see. And when people are walking through, our Saturday event had parents from other yacht clubs who came over and came with friends, and they would sit, and they were astounded that it was that easy, because we didn't make it hard. And I think that's something that was really unique to that experience. I want to thank you guys for making the rookie feel very comfortable. Sometimes we had a discussion. You were talking about the earlier Zoom calls. We had 2 doctors from the same medical facility who had diametrically opposed decisions. Well, you had to have that discussion, is that one had a son that wanted to sail and they had one that didn't have a son that wanted to sail, or something to that effect. So sometimes we're all colored with our own prejudice, no matter what they may be or may not be. But you have those discussions, you give the opinions, and I just think that what I learned from this group was this is as dedicated as a group of coaches I've ever been around. And that's something that made my heart feel good, because I could go back to my guys and say, here's what we're doing. And this is the way we're going to do it. We're going to build it brick.
Greg, that's yachting. That's sailing. It's not, I remember reading something on Facebook where some from a 505 regatta, some competitor gave his spare mast to another so he could, so they could compete. And I remember commenting, just saying, that's really excellent. That's really cool. And the person got back to me and said, you know what, that's the 505 class. We were here for each other. And I think that's around.
I think there's some sports, Mike, that's not true. And I coach a couple of sports. I think for me it's true in sailing, and I certainly think it's true in skiing. But let me give you the last anecdote. We started Inside Great Lakes Sailing because I wanted to bring some publicity to this process, because one of the things that hit me was, you guys take a week off. And you think about this, Christine, as a coach. You guys take a week off in the middle of your season for Mackinac because everybody still races.
Oh, yeah.
You don't know of coaches in any other sport that still compete in the sport that they play.
Well, Emily doesn't always like it, but we still do it.
Well, here's my point.
It's an unwritten contract rule.
Here's my point. If I'm coaching a team in the spring, I'm angry if I have to take a week off for spring, because I'm just going to go home and sit. My kids are going to go to Florida. If I was a lacrosse player, or if I was in a sport like sailing, I would go participate like the kids. And that's the distinction between sailing and almost every other sport, because you can still be a competitive racer at 50, 60, 70 years old, which is not true in any other sport, with maybe the exception of golf, and at the best you're going to be an amateur.
Yeah, so my lacrosse days are behind me.
Well, my point, Mike, is that when you've got your feet in it as a competitor and still a coach, I think brings more passion to the table. But let me leave you with this. I made the comment to somebody from actually your club, Mike. I made a comment that we should start a TV program and I could get a bunch of America's Cup guys, and I was basically laughed out of the room. I made the deal that for every America's Cup captain or tactician I could get online, that he would owe a local charitable sailing organization at the end of the season $100. And if he was American Cup captain, he owned $500. There's a local organization.
What's your bill? You're about to get your bill, Mike.
There's a local organization going to end up with a check for something in the neighborhood of about $1,500 when we get to the end of September.
Dang.
Because after I got a couple of them, then it wasn't a joke anymore. It was like for real.
Hey,
And so
Greg, you're a star. You're a star now.
no, that's not wasn't my point.
Huge program.
That's not wasn't my point. My point was
Shut up.
I've got one coming up with Ben Eisel, which is a really interesting interview. But the point I'm trying to make is that it's so much more accessible, and I think I hope when people watch this, they get the passion, the love of what we all bring to the table, and then the accessibility that if they would just reach out a little bit more, they'd see a lot more, and it would be a much better landscape for them. And that's because of people like you guys who bust your butts, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate your time today and just everything you did for kids for the summer. So,
And kudos to you too, because honestly, I don't think any of us would have just started making these video series. And I know several kids and parents that follow them, and it's so as a non-state, as a coach out of other sports, you're coming into it with new things that we don't see, which is also valuable. So
I think you bring a lot to this organization as a professional coach. I mean, and I've worked with, like, in my lacrosse career, I work with coaches like you, but I think you bring a lot to this association, and so kudos to you.
cool. Thanks. Anybody got any last parting thoughts other than spend
2 thumbs up. We did an awesome job. Seriously, good job, guys. We did it. We really, Emily and I were like, we did it. We all did it.
God willing, we're back to normal next year.
Yeah, I know. And I think it was so big for the kids. The summer that we created was invaluable. So.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to doing it again.
Okay.
Cool. We'll look forward to the conversations this winter. Thanks again for your time and commitment to your kids, to the program, and to making kids sure that they're on boats when they're 25. So thanks again for your time, and a safe evening, and we'll see you soon.
Right. And I'm sorry.
All right, thanks, Greg. Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.